Okay, we're live.
All right. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Can they hear us?
They can hear
They
us.
sure can.
All right,
Hopefully.
tell me when, can I have the clacker on your right, Bob?
Not yet. Not yet, though.
Ian's just finishing something.
Gonna get the
Where's Rhett?
TikTok one ready. Talk to chat.
Good. Ian.
Can you guys in the chat hear us? Okay, they can hear us.
Okay, good. Very good. Give them the rundown.
All right, so we're going to do 3 shows tonight. Sorry we're late. We had some technical problems. We are going to do, we're going to review a TV show called Hello Tomorrow. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's on Apple TV. Then we're going to talk about the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which just came out. And then we're going to talk about,
Storytelling
and science fiction movies. And we're going to start in just a minute. Ian's finishing something, and then we're going to get this going.
So we're going to say that this is the third in
seconds.
our series. What's the series?
I think this is the 4th, isn't it?
No, I think it's third.
3rd? Okay.
What's the series name?
Excuse me. We did world building characters, right? That was just it. It was world building and characters.
Yeah. Then we do monsters. Or the monsters.
Oh, did we do monsters something? Or
Yeah.
that was just separate.
Was that separate? Okay. Yeah. All right, Ian, tell me when you're ready.
All right. You can clack her.
All right, here we go, boys.
Right. Now.
Are we good to go?
We're good to go.
Hi, this is Steve.
This is Bob.
This is Jay.
We are Alpha Quadrant 6, a science fiction review show. And on this week's episode, we are going to be reviewing the Apple TV show Hello Tomorrow. This is an interesting show. When it was first advertised, I first saw the previews for it. I really was anticipating it.
Yeah, me too.
The whole aesthetic is very appealing. It's essentially retrofuturistic, right? So it's like
right, which is basically retrofuturism. It was born after World War II, but it's essentially looking at scientific, sci-fi predictions through the eyes of another time, and it's very illuminating. You could see very interesting things about. It's often very revealing about the culture itself and how they envision it. It tells us a lot about them. But retrofuturism for the 1950s is beautiful. It's fascinating. It's really compelling, and it really started. It was really the beginning of this retrofuturism movement, and of course that has been now subdivided into specific technologies, and that's why there's cyberpunk, there's steampunk, there's atom punk, all these other punks are kind of cassette punk. It's all kind of related to this idea of looking through a specific lens into a technology and predicting future developments.
So this show,
it's fascinating stuff.
This show is in the 1950s, but it's an alternate 1950s. It's the 1950s if the technology that they predicted had come true, right? So they have hover cars and they have robots and stuff like that. And in fact, one of the biggest selling points of this TV show is the retrofuturism aspect.
Oh my God,
of
it sucks you in. As soon as you see that preview, you're like, I'm watching this. It looks wonderful.
But in the end, this show boils down to, like we always say, the quality of the writing and the characters and the character development. And I think, that really largely is what I'm going to be commenting on tonight, because that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would summarize it is like the opening credits are awesome, and they're the best part of the whole show. It's almost as if they shot their whole budget and their whole creative wad on the look and feel of the show and didn't have much left over for, a compelling story.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, for a show that was selling itself on its retrofuturism, they didn't go too headlong into the futurism itself, right? They have a few things that they have. There's hover cars everywhere. That's great. They're cool. But, after the first episode, they lose their charm right away. It's like, okay, cars are hovering, but then they have a robot here and there. And then
Same robot, though. Same exact robot type.
Yeah.
Fulfilling all these different roles.
They have one model. So.
Yeah, it's one model that they change. And all right,
I like
guess.
the fact that they have the phones is like a massive console
Yes.
with a little computer screen and everything.
But they didn't lean into the futurism enough.
They could have done more.
Now, again,
Agreed.
the three people sitting here, we're futurism fanatics. We love
Right,
futurism. So we wanted to see more of what their vision was of the future. But the problem is, and my major disconnect is, they sold the show on that. It's even called Hello Tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's basically saying we're in the 1950s and we're talking about tomorrow, which is their future. And they didn't go deep enough into it. They didn't give us the flavor. In fact, they didn't do the 1950s enough in this show.
Well, I don't think it's supposed to be the 1950s. It's
is-
supposed to be the future as envisioned by the 1950s.
But Steve, it's so totally is in the 1950s.
I know the culture
setting.
is 1950s.
But they didn't do the culture well enough because it's
Well, they deliberately changed certain things, like they basically got rid of the sexism and racism, which is probably a good call, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And not everybody is smoking, which is another.
They didn't get
aesthetic
rid of the
choice.
sexism, though. I mean, just because there isn't any flagrant sexism in the show. I mean, women are still the housewives that hand drinks to
Right.
husbands when they come back and everything. So I don't feel like they gave us enough of what the culture actually is. It's a little sterile.
It's a little, the whole thing
It
comes
is.
off as a little sterile, which I think you could say that's deliberate because the retrofuturism of the 50s was sterile, right? Their vision of the future was sort of
Right.
this sanitized, sterile future. But there are times when you do things for accuracy that are not good for storytelling.
Yeah.
And the sterile thing, in a way, it works in that it feels like, that is the kind of that vision of the future, but it just makes for a show that's not. It's a little boring to watch.
It's not the most compelling show.
It's
That's
not
the
the most
thing.
compelling show.
And there's also this is a good point. I don't want to gloss over. I want to stress this point that Steve is making, that this, even though it looks like the 50s, this isn't really supposed to be the 50s. This is really supposed to be the 70s as envisioned by the 50s.
Understood. I
So
get
that's
it. I get it.
that's a kind of a different take than, this is 50s with high tech.
But
Yeah, it's
but
not,
I
yeah.
question whether or not you're just saying that, or if that's actually because there's no proof of this in the show whatsoever. And I say this all the time that we have to, if it's not there, if you can't get it from the text, right? If you're talking about reading a story, if it's not in the text, then it's not really there.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's like an
sometimes
extrapolation of
some
retrofuturism.
things are left best unstated, though, and I think not saying what the year is a good thing.
Yeah.
This is the undefined future. It's not the 1950s, though, because that's not, there's no reason to think that it's an alternate reality. But anyway,
Okay.
that
But the
aside-
fact that we're talking about this and that we're questioning it and we're not sure and all that, that's bad writing.
I don't think so. That's not necessary. Not everything needs to be answered. Again, I
That's
think
a minor point, I think, compared to the
Having-
more problems that we see.
when you're doing futurism, sometimes having it being in an undefined time, it works to your advantage, and
And
that's fine.
But
Because
anyway,
otherwise, you would say that's too early for or too late for the.
I get
1970s or
that, but
whatever.
I feel like because it's so the 1950s.
But that's the idea that they extrapolated their culture into the future. It's
Right.
like
That's
it's
what
exactly
retrofuturism
like
is.
Fallout 4. You had 2070. It was explicitly 2070, and it was 100% 1950s culture.
Sure.
Right? It's the same thing.
Yeah, but you knew what the year was.
Yeah, but so that doesn't,
All right,
that's
so-
an irrelevant point. But
So I agreed. Steve and I were chit-chatting a little bit before, and Steve said that this show has no highs and lows. This show has no highs and no lows. It doesn't really have a heartbeat. You just watch it. It's mildly entertaining. You don't really you're not on an emotional roller coaster. There's not much intrigue. There's not much character interaction that's really interesting. It just
Yeah.
kind of happens in front of you. It's like
it's an undramatic drama.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I enjoyed it, and I look forward to watching the next episode, and that's fine. But in today's day, the way how epic TV is right now, this golden age of TV that we're continuing to experience, this doesn't cut it in terms
Yeah.
of like some of the really good stuff that's on TV these days. I'm
And-
watching Perry Mason,
Yeah.
and I
Really
watched The
good.
Americans and,
Yeah.
Well,
and
there's no-
Justified.
there's-
Like, oh my God,
There's no
amazing.
action at all in this show. It's all about people talking and doing stuff. There's no action, right? So when you have a show that has no action, which is a way that you can give almost anything a heartbeat. If every once in a while there's a fist fight or some type of over the top thing. Wait, let me finish.
It doesn't have to be.
But because they don't have any of that, then there needs to be intrigue.
Even
there
more
needs to be drama between people. There needs to be like things happening
And
in
the
plot.
dialogue has to be really good.
Right,
And the dialogue
right.
is not really good. Yeah, I agree. And it's a little disappointing because they had a great idea, I think. They didn't execute it well. And for me, that's like, well, they shot their wad. Like the whole retrofuturism thing now
was the whole thing.
They shot that idea on a show that's mediocre and was like, like if there isn't a season 2, I wouldn't be
right.
This is the kind of show I'll forget about it, very, very
Yeah,
quickly.
absolutely.
From-
I won't be really thinking about it.
From a storytelling
tomorrow.
perspective, they didn't have a compelling enough story.
Yeah.
They had like it's because we're in spoiler territory, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There's one idea here. It's that there's a salesman who's a scam artist who is selling people on retrofuturism, right? He's basically saying, I'm going to send you to the moon. You're going to live on the moon, right? That's the whole thing.
He's
right
selling
there.
them on the vision of the future that was popular at that time. And there's just there needed to be a couple more layers there.
Definitely. It's not complicated enough, and the characters, as much as I can give you descriptions of the characters, yes, there is good initial character development. There's different people, they have different personalities and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're kind of sterile in their they're all
a little flat.
Each of them are flat. There isn't life in these characters, which I think means that they didn't write these characters one stitch beyond
what's happening on the
exactly
screen.
who they are in that moment. They didn't go, this guy, this was this person's past, and really make these characters come to life. So we're just kind of watching them kind of fumble through this basic, non-impressive storyline. That's it. That's it in a nutshell.
Disappointing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great aesthetic. I love, again, my favorite part of every episode is the opening credits. But
so at least watch that.
Yeah.
If you watch the first episode, you'll see everything that's cool about the show, and then I think you're good
done.
to go.
Yeah. Okay.
That's true.
All right, guys, if you enjoy this show, short episode today, not much to talk about with this Hello Tomorrow. I keep thinking of Hello Fresh. You know that food thing, they deliver food to your door?
No.
It's called Hello Fresh.
All
anyway, if you enjoy science fiction, if you enjoy hearing critiques on bad science fiction, please join us. We are Alpha Quadrant 6. You can go to alphaquadrant6.com. You can go to our Facebook page, and we have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Alpha Quadrant 6. And we'll see you next week. All right, that was a quickie. We're going to roll right into episode 2 here.
Which one's this?
We're going to do
D&D?
Dungeons and Dragons now. Tell me when you're ready, Ian.
Just 1 second. Let me stop and start. Wardrobe change. Hold on. Just got to remux a little.
Yeah, Visto, you're right. I mean, there's definitely a big father-son.
Yeah, the problem is I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care about that relationship or those characters enough for that to draw me in. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, like even in that relationship, which is the primary relationship in the show, it's just kind of like, you know, like
it's not carrying the show.
They keep doing the same thing over and over again. He's deceiving the son who doesn't know he's his son, and it's the same every show. It's like, is he going to say it? Are they going to evolve? Is anything going to change?
I was hoping for more of stuff on the moon, even a couple of scenes on the moon.
Yeah, but the fact is, there's nothing on the moon.
I thought there was something a little bit more than nothing.
I agree.
Like
usually something is better than nothing.
Just the A-plexes, and like there's no B and C and D plexes. Oh, where are they going to live? I wanted to see the moon.
Right, you can clack her.
All right, here we go. Okay, we are going to move directly into Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Is that it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, this is Steve.
Hold on.
Whoa. What do you got here?
All right. All right, go ahead.
All right, go ahead. Do it again.
Hi, this is Steve.
This is Bob.
This is Jay.
We are Alpha Quadrant 6, a science fiction review show. And on this episode, we're going to stray a little bit into fantasy. We're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
And you guys loved it.
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, 2 of the people sitting on this panel have played D&D for decades.
Extensively.
Extensively.
And
That's right.
And I know it. I have
And
played.
Bob is
I'm
with
just-
those people who have played.
I played multiple campaigns a long time ago.
But do you
These guys
love it,
just
Bob?
got-
Do you love it?
I thoroughly enjoyed it when I played it, but I grew up.
You are not
no.
qualified to review.
No,
this
these
movie.
guys, you guys are like uber.
Right.
We're tabletop role players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'll say this.
Yes.
I had no expectations. I think you
I had
guys
very
agree.
low expectations.
From watching the previews,
I
we were
had-
like, this movie could suck so horribly bad. This movie did not suck. This movie,
Not at all.
It
I
was
had-
a fun ride.
was a fun
Absolutely.
ride.
I had middling expectations because I saw some reviews. I saw the preview on TV, and I was like, my hopes were getting kind of high, and they were met
But-
or exceeded.
But there are things that this movie did well, and there are things this movie did not do well.
So
Well,
I-
first off, the directors
yeah.
clearly love D&D.
Yeah, they get it.
They have played D&D. They enjoy D&D. D&D, real D&D is throughout this entire movie. A lot of it comes from Forgotten Realms.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it comes from just D&D
Yes.
itself. The creatures, characters. If you're looking
It's
at
right out of the
if you're
manuals.
looking at a character or a creature, chances are that is lifted directly right from it.
sure.
I think they really did. They paid homage to real D&D. This wasn't just like inspired. This was like the real
Absolutely.
stuff.
When the magicians were casting spells, you can identify what spells they were casting. Cone Cold and the Magic Hand and all those-
Everyone. They came up with, if you go online, you will find every character from the movie and their stats and the spells for
Wait
the...
a second,
I mean,
though.
they really...
But the main character,
The bard.
the bard, who wasn't a bard,
well, he was the bard.
He was
but,
bard.
but he
He wasn't
wasn't.
the bard, but he did not display any bard magic.
There was no bard magic.
Yeah.
But he really, what I found funny is that he had no skills. He was just a planner. He was just a guy that can come up with plans. He was classless. He didn't have a class in a movie that was filled with people who were very, very specifically a class, which I thought was
Could he
interesting.
be a low-level bard?
No, Bob. I mean, it's almost it's like a deliberate joke that they did. This guy doesn't have a class. He shouldn't even be in the movie because he's not a D&D character.
But they kind of joked about it. So like the druid says, "And what do you bring to the table?" And
Yeah, he says it.
No,
I know
he said,
it's
"I'm
part
the
of the-
planner. I'm the guy who's going to make the plan." So then you've made the plan. So why do we still need you?
Sometimes the plan goes bad. So you
Sometimes the
make
plan
bad
goes-
plans?
I was
That
sure
was
he was
fun.
going to be a thief. I was positive he was going to end up being a rogue because he didn't do anything
Yeah.
with his instrument. Like if he was going to be a bard, bards play songs and you give people encouragement, or they can do magical effects with their
Yeah.
music. If he was going to do it, it would have happened earlier in the show. It didn't
Yeah.
happen. So I love the aesthetic. It totally had the D&D thing. I'll tell you my favorite part of this entire show, other than the one Easter egg that we'll get to that I really liked, was I liked the villain.
Forge or the female.
The female.
Yeah.
She was fantastic. Her character was cool. She was evil. She was clever. She
Powerful.
was very powerful. I loved the reveal at the end when, I'm sure it was your favorite part of the movie. She was, spoilers, of course. She was undead. She was basically
Yeah.
a lich, pretty much. She should have been more powerful, actually, than she was.
I mean, time stops are really powerful.
Time,
Yeah.
That's like 9th level, isn't that like that?
Yeah.
You can't get much more powerful
Yeah,
than
and
that.
it did
level?
take the entire party to take her out.
Yes.
Which is,
And they needed a good plan. So
Yeah.
it's a good thing they had a planner.
that's right. They did have a good
Right.
plan, and that worked well.
My two favorite
Yes.
things.
All right, guys.
I know what they are.
I know what they are.
Speak with the dead. I was
Yes.
like giggling like a little kid, waiting for them to talk to the dead. And the dead were the corpses that were animated were good. Although I was hoping for one notch better, like maybe even some real CG animated corpse that isn't a guy in makeup,
Yeah.
but still a funny and one of the most funny scenes in
It
the
was the
entire
funniest
movie.
part of the
funniest
movie.
part. The other thing, gelatinous cube. I was waiting. I was so excited to see the gelatinous cube because when do you see a gelatinous cube?
Steve, what did you
It's-
think about that, though? They went into a gelatinous cube.
Oh my god, that was kind of silly. I
You
think
can't
because-
get out of one. When you're in one, it's so hard to get out of it, and it should have been melting their flesh immediately.
That was a problem. They were in there. I was like cringing because they were in there far too long.
They
But
couldn't
they were
breathe
pulled
in
out.
there.
They were pulled out.
But you
I mean,
can't. They're
maybe
essentially
you can
holding
pull-
their breath the whole time. So that was
But it was cool.
It was fun to see it, yeah, and everything. But the thing didn't move. It didn't even. It wasn't
Yeah.
even a living creature at that point. It was basically
True.
Jello. That's
And-
basically what they had. There
Right,
was a
and
Jello.
the other with acid inside, and the other great thing, of course, was a mimic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Classic.
That was
a
fun.
lot of fun.
The other creature that I thought was fantastic was the Displacer Beast. That was like the jaguar that had the two tentacles coming off of
Yeah.
its
They did
back.
that really well.
They really did it well, and it was funny because I never really thought about the fact that the tentacles are what create the
Oh, no?
illusions. Yeah, it's basically casting an illusion
Yeah.
using those tentacles. But they showed in the movie, which was a really cool idea, is that there was actually magic coming off of the
Yeah.
tentacles.
Yeah,
Very, very cool.
And Thunderjaw, the obese dragon, which of course also lifted right out of, I think, Forgotten Realms or something in D&D. The incredibly obese dragon, red dragon, that was fed people so much that he couldn't even walk or fly, but he could slide down his, the cave
Yeah.
or whatever. That was hilarious. That
He-
was such a fun scene.
It took me that creature in particular took me out of the movie a little bit because I found myself thinking like, how did he get so fat?
They fed him people.
They fed him people like
Who's they?
that's part of his whole lore. That's part of his whole history.
It wasn't in the movie.
It's real.
It wasn't in the movie though.
Dragons eat people, though.
I think
you know
they
that.
mentioned it.
No,
I don't know.
no,
I
they
don't know.
didn't.
But
Yeah.
it's based on on something that's actually part of.
Okay.
part of the
I mean,
lore.
I honestly don't. I never read that, so I don't know who he was. I mean, I'm sure if I knew of that dragon, I would have really liked to see it.
But I think that the D&D fan service was the perfect amount.
Oh my God.
It was enough without leaning too heavily on it or getting too tropey or cliched.
Yeah.
The storytelling is solid A-. I mean, just from the opening scene, when he's pleading, his case to be let free. Again, we'll be talking about this more when we do an episode on storytelling. It was a great way to reveal information to the audience while telling us a lot about the characters.
Yes. Yeah.
It was like
and-
his character sheet. He was
Yeah,
reading his
it
character
was
sheet.
it was a lot of fun, and went in unexpected directions, and of course they bring it back at the end in a very, very funny way. And then throughout the movie, I thought the storytelling again very good. There were tropes throughout, and most of them sort of worked. They didn't all completely work, but the story had me compelled the whole time. I was interested in
man.
what was going to happen next.
But
So it was very, very good.
but on that note,
yes.
I wasn't feeling this movie as much as I like to feel movies, right?
Yeah.
I didn't really care that much. I didn't care that he was separated from his daughter the amount that I should have cared, right? This all
Because
comes
it was a
down.
lighthearted movie. I mean,
But you could still have it be comedy, and you could still have it be
Yeah.
lighthearted, and still feel the feels, and it just wasn't there enough. It
I
did,
thought it was. I disagree.
I mean, at
Think
the end, that the resolution at the end and the decision that the bard makes with his daughter brought a tear to my eye. That was moving.
you cried in the D&D
I
movie.
said it. I said it brought a tear to my eye.
Okay, that's good.
It was moving. It was that decision he makes, to me, really tied it up into a nice bow. That really, like, if you could bring that into the movie as well as the fun and the action and the fantasy, to me that was a great addition to the movie.
I was not as enthusiastic as you guys. I enjoyed it. I really did. If they came out with another one, I'd watch it, and I'd be
Oh,
happy.
they will.
to-
It's doing very well.
right. But I wasn't sitting on the edge of my seat. All the
It wasn't that kind of movie.
It
really.
wasn't. It didn't have enough. But that's what I'm saying. Like I needed a little bit more. I needed to care a little bit more. I didn't laugh as much. It's a comedy. I chuckled a couple of times. Like nothing really got me. There wasn't anything really funny in there, right?
I disagree. I mean, it wasn't a laugh out loud funny movie, but
The balance was good. I liked
thought
the
the balance
balance.
was good, and there were parts of it like I think the things that were supposed to be funny, I was incredibly entertained by. Like when they do the Speak with Dead spell.
That was great.
And again, there's a lot of meta commentary, like the kind of things we would say when we're playing around the table. Like, why 5 questions? It seems a little arbitrary. Like, for this, it's completely arbitrary, why 5 questions? Because it's all game balance stuff that has nothing to do with, like, a real world.
Right.
And then the first corpse that they're interrogating, and they're accidentally asking questions that are counting against the 5 questions. The thing is, if you've ever played the game, whether as a player or a GM, you could 100% see a GM doing that to their players.
Right, so that-
and that's basically what that was.
That felt like they were actually role playing. It really
Yeah.
did, and they did a good job. And that was
And it
by
was
far the
fun.
best
It was
scene in the
really
movie.
fun.
It was the best scene in the movie. By
all right,
far.
the other thing that needs to mention, I loved the Paladin.
Oh.
I loved the Paladin. They pulled off that character so
Yes.
well because, I mean, yes, that's the trope, the Paladin who's annoyingly and preternaturally heroic, but this character pulled it off in a way that's just better than I've ever seen done before, and I was definitely hanging on everything he was going to do because
he
it was
was
just
good.
he was a very compelling character to watch.
Yeah,
Loved
formidable.
him without seeming too much. Like it was pushing plausibility, but it didn't break it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I thought they hit the sweet spot with
And
that
then he
character.
walked away. And then he walked away when he was done. He was
Yeah.
out, and he wasn't part of the group anymore. And even his walk away was funny.
Yeah, they made funny of Howie White. Is he
Yeah.
going to go over the rock? He went over the rock.
Yeah,
Right,
it was
but,
good.
But
Chris Pine did very
Yes.
well.
He was good. No, he pulled it off.
He killed that role. He's made for that role.
And that's what it would be like to actually play D&D with him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's exactly what he would do. All right, now, there was one massive Easter egg
Bring
in this
it.
movie.
Yeah.
And I'm
One-
ashamed of myself.
One
because
massive
of this.
Easter egg. And I
am literally ashamed.
I was the only person in the entire theater that picked up on the Easter egg.
Really?
Yes.
How do you know?
Because there was 3 people in the theater.
All right.
Thank you for setting that up so perfectly, Steve. I'm sure I was the only person in that movie theater that saw the Easter egg. All
I'm
right.
so mad at myself.
I'll tell you guys what it is. So, and I'm reaching way back here. This
it's a reach.
this Easter egg is only for people who are indoctrinated. But there was a cartoon in the 1980s called Dungeons and Dragons, and there was a group of kids that were brought into a Dungeons and Dragons world from riding a carnival ride.
Roller
And
coaster, yep.
they each were their characters were literally named their character classes.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're bard. You're the barbarian.
You're
know
a
what I mean?
paladin, yeah.
Yeah. So that group was in the maze. There was 2 groups that were in the maze
the
of death
exact
at
group
the end.
with the costumes,
Everything.
perfect costumes.
It was them.
And for some reason, Steve and I didn't spot
I
it.
wasn't paying attention to them.
It just, I saw them, but I saw like nothing really leaked
Didn't
out.
gel.
It didn't
Yeah.
gel,
So-
and I can't believe I missed it. It's so obvious when I look at the reruns.
So something
Ah.
something occurred to me when I was talking to you guys a little bit earlier about
Yeah.
this that I didn't want to tell you, is that if those characters exist in the show, then that means that was them
Yes.
and that there is a dungeon master.
Oh,
Think about that.
imagine if they
Like,
could. They
They
bring
can't. They
him.
can't bring those. Those were those characters.
It doesn't necessarily.
Stop.
mean
Let me
that.
finish my thought.
They
Those
could.
were those characters.
Yeah.
And if those characters were there,
Then
then,
there's a
their
dungeon.
backstory exists. So I put it to you guys that there is
But
a
Jay,
yeah.
They've
This
been
is
there since the 80s.
this is the D&D cinematic universe.
Okay.
It not necessarily
Right.
not necessarily aligns with the cartoon
And
from
so,
the 80s.
and where was Uni? There was no Uni the Unicorn, Jay. And
And who was the guy with the one horn?
Bad guy. He was a
Venger,
good villain.
like Venger or
Venger,
so.
yeah, he was a
cool.
good villain.
He was cool. That's interesting, Jay. It'd be fun if they went along with that in the sequel.
Yeah.
If they come out with a sequel, it would be funny.
Maybe
if
they
did
get
that.
their own movie. They
I
get their
don't
own
imagine
sequel.
that. That
But
would
didn't
be
some of them
awesome.
die?
I don't think so.
They were in that maze, man. That was deadly. That was a deadly maze.
Did they kill off a couple? I don't remember now.
I think
I
a
don't
couple of them
remember.
might have died.
Yeah, but there's
Too
a
long.
dungeon master, so they're fine.
They got resurrected.
All
right, enough of that.
So the key word here is fun. This movie
It was a lot of fun.
It was fun. You can't take it seriously. You can't take D&D seriously through the lens of this movie, right?
Well,
You just got to
you
be.
can. I would argue you can take it seriously because it's so faithful in so many ways to D&D that a lot of the fans love it, and you're not gonna be like somebody who's read the book and see the movie and be like, oh, this movie is so unfaithful. It's extremely faithful. I would say that if you're a fan of D&D or not a fan at all, you will enjoy it.
Yeah, you don't have to know D&D at all to enjoy this.
Yeah,
movie.
there's just extra little doodads if you do. But all right, here's the other one for me. One final comment on it. And Jay and I were talking about this earlier too. That the movie deliberately hit a certain zone in terms of the balance of comedy and drama and grittiness, and it's definitely a movie designed to appeal to a younger audience, no question, but also be nostalgic for older gamers like us. And that's fine, and it did what it did, I thought, very well, thoroughly entertaining. But I do, and I know Jay does as well, enjoy grittier styles, grittier movies more.
like The Witcher.
Like The Witcher, right?
Yeah.
So imagine this movie, but done like The Witcher, where it's totally serious. The comedy is only a little bit here and there for relief, but it's really a drama. It's really an action, intense drama. I would love to see more of this movie, but I would also love to see a D&D style movie that is Witcher style gritty. Like this is a hard campaign, not a fun-loving campaign. This is the kind of campaign where your characters are probably going to get killed at some point, and it takes itself very seriously, I would be totally open to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all like fantasy adventures. We, Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of things on TV that are already there. So like this is a world of information. They could literally go here is the backstory of the universe that you need to write a really compelling, hard-hitting, scary,
There's
story.
already so much world building out there in the D&D universe. I mean, there'd be so much source material to draw upon.
Totally.
Absolutely.
So go see this movie, guys. We really liked it.
Definitely.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, please join us on our website. You can go to alphaquadrant and the number 6.com. And we also have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/alphaquadrant and the number 6. And we will see you next week.
It was good, guys. That was good.
Okay. All right. Last one.
To hit AC0.
We're going to talk about storytelling in science fiction, or in speculative fiction as well. Okay, let me know, guys. Somebody said they can make a horror film of heroes going through the Tomb of Horrors. That is a freaking awesome idea.
Yeah.
The Tomb of Stinking Horrors, the deadliest module of all time.
There's 100 movies in here. You could do a Spelljammer movie. I mean, there's so many.
It's a total universe.
Yeah, there's so much source material.
I hope they milk the crap out of it because we need a good fantasy like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this next episode that we're doing right now is a series of episodes that we're doing about fiction, about
Science
speculative
fiction.
and science fiction.
The
So
elements of good science fiction.
we did one on character development and characters. We did one on world building.
This is the third one.
And this is our third one about storytelling.
Okay, do a clacker.
Here's the clacker.
The clacker.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, stand by. Hold on.
Hold
Let
on.
me just wait.
Hold on.
Wait.
Ian is doing something. He's moving watermelons from one side of the
Accessing.
room to the next.
No, I gotta turn the denoise around. Okay, hold on.
He's turning on the denoiser. He's flipping switches.
Okay, go ahead.
And here we go.
All right, we're good?
Mhm.
Good. Hi, this is Steve.
This is Bob.
This is Jay.
We are Alpha Quadrant 6, a science fiction review show, and this episode is the third in our series on the elements of great science fiction. The first episode we did was on world building, then we did an episode on good character development, and on this episode, we're going to talk about the elements of good storytelling, because without a good plot, without a good story to tell, it doesn't matter if the world is compelling or if the characters are awesome. You have to tell a good story. Now, there's a lot of ways to break this down. A lot of different writers, or those who analyze this sort of thing, can point to different kinds of elements. We're going to put this together sort of into our own list. And this is not going to be like a writing class. We're just going to talk about some of the elements that are important and also give as many examples as we can from science fiction, mostly science fiction movies, maybe some TV, maybe even some literature. I want to start with what I think is the biggest element, or one of the biggest elements. Obviously, the story itself is huge, but the thing that I find often makes or breaks good storytelling is how information is given to the audience.
Definitely.
Right? How do you manage that flow of information? If you give too much right away, it could be overwhelming. If you give too little, then the audience is lost. You've been watching a movie, especially a science fiction movie, and you're a third of the way in, and there's something wrong.
And you turn to your partner and you go, "What the hell is going on?
What's going on?
What's happening?"
Yeah, you just feel like there's stuff happening. You're not really sure how it all hangs
Who
together.
is this guy? Who is this guy? Yeah. Dude, that happens a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Happens a lot in literature for me.
Yeah.
Like too many names, too many people. Come on.
Yeah, but literature is a different
It's different.
experience.
It is.
Because you're reading everything. But with the movie, you have the visual communication.
Yeah.
But you don't have as much just straight up exposition.
It's phenomenally hard
Yeah.
to be a good storyteller. You have the story.
Yeah.
You have your characters. You have everything in front of you, and now you're thinking, I have to communicate this through the medium that I'm telling it. If I'm writing it, if I'm showing it on, on film, do I have 2 hours to tell this story? Do I have 10 hours to tell this story?
Right.
So when you think about all the things that these people that do storytelling on the degree that we love, like Game of Thrones level storytelling, the amount of prep work that it takes, the amount of foresight that it takes, and the amount of thinking that they have to put into each one of those episodes is profound.
I also think, obviously it has to be well written from the beginning, but I also find that you could tell the difference between a script that was iterated and iterated and iterated, and also in the editing was re-edited and re-edited until it was really tight. Like we've told the story on AQ6 before about Star Wars, The New Hope, the original one, when the first cut didn't work.
Right.
Why didn't it work? It was the same story. It was all the same elements. They took a couple of elements out when they re-edited it, but the re-edit was so much better because the re-edit was edited by somebody who knows how to tell a story, who knows how to manage the experience of the viewer, and is thinking in every scene, what does the audience know at this point? So what are they going to be thinking when they're watching this? And if you just are rearranging the order of scenes, like in the release version of A New Hope, when we meet Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, that's the first time that we're seeing him. When the droids land on Tatooine, we have no idea what's on that planet.
That's right.
They start out in a desert and it's a blank slate. We have no idea. So they head off in a direction. They could encounter anything. We have no idea. But in the original, before it was re-edited, we had already seen Tatooine. We had already seen Luke on Tatooine.
That's right.
And it just completely changed the experience.
I'll give you a perfect example right on Tatooine. So George Lucas, originally when they did the original cut, the very first time that you experienced the Force was through Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Talking to the generals on the Death Star, right?
Force joke.
And then what happened was George Lucas's wife went back and re-edited it and said, no, the first time that the audience experiences the Force, it has to be in the scene where Luke is talking to
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan, right? He's in Obi-Wan's house. And that's where and she realized that it has to be a good experience. The Force can't be initially experienced in a dark way. It has to be experienced in the right. Think about that.
Smart.
What an incredible way. She was so insightful that she knew that and you're right, Steve. Like the editor needs to always think, what does the audience know up to this point?
Right.
And what is the next thing that I should reveal to them that will help push the story forward in the best light that you possibly can?
Now, in science fiction, you have a lot more options when you're talking about the order in which to reveal information to the audience. Because, obviously in any movie, you can tell the story in a non-linear way. You can do flashbacks, you could jump back and forth between two periods of time. One dramatic movie that was not a science fiction movie, but just told the story out of order was Memento, where you get the scenes in reverse order, and it's meant to mimic the lack of memory of the main character. It was very powerful, very well done. But in science fiction, we could do other things. The big one, the big plot device that is used in science fiction to tell a non-linear story is time travel. Right? You could literally go back in time, not just give a flashback.
Right.
Or the characters are interacting with people from different time periods, and they could influence things over periods of time. I think one of my favorite movies, science fiction movies, that used time travel so effectively as a device of not just a plot device, but as a storytelling device, was 12 Monkeys. Really? I don't know. I think it's an underrated movie. I know that
it is.
It's generally considered to be a top movie, but it doesn't get, the attention that it really deserves.
No, it's a great movie.
It's a great storytelling.
It's definitely worth watching again now, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any favorites that are in that genre, that using time travel as a storytelling device?
Well, Terminator just leaps to mind.
Yeah, Terminator is way up front.
That's the classic one. I remember after that movie in '84, driving home thinking, all these questions flowing through my mind about the ramifications of the time travel and who knew what when. It was so fascinating and handled. And it's been done a lot, but that movie is just the one that just to me just jumps in front of my mind. It's so well done.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I also think the time travel is a very dangerous way to incorporate into your storytelling. I like flashbacks the most. in storytelling. I like it when you get a side story with a flashback, right? So you get to see the backstory of one of the characters. These flashbacks can happen anytime. You know what I mean? They could be a full episode if you're watching a TV series.
And that doesn't have to be a flashback. It could be that person telling their backstory to another character in the story for some legitimate reason. The other thing that I was trying to think of a way that you could use, this exposition out of sequence storytelling other than time travel that you can do in science fiction, but not in science fiction. And one thing that occurred to me was Total Recall, right? So now, right, so the main character has part of their memory was blanked out. And so he is now sort of re-experiencing his own backstory without remembering it. And we know that like Cohagen has information that he says things that don't make sense in the story as we have it. Like, remember when he says that they escaped from the zone? He's like, perfect. He's like, okay, so he's got some master plan here,
right?
That we don't know about, that Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't know about, and so that sort of memory wipe aspect of things.
It was a great way to. Well, I think the best movie, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best, maybe in the top 3 for science fiction that has a very very interesting way of telling the story is The Matrix. The way at first we're basically sitting in the seat that Neo is sitting in. We only know what he knows.
Right.
We're getting little tidbits of information, and we're fed this breadcrumb trail in the first act of the movie. We don't know anything that's going on. Basically, we're giving ourselves over to like Morpheus and who are these people and what is the Matrix? He heard of the Matrix but didn't know what it was. All these clues are being dropped, and then all of a sudden, boom! Like we find out. Morpheus gives him the answer.
And that's an example of what writers call spectacle. Spectacle is when there is a memorable moment in a movie, an iconic moment. It doesn't necessarily have to push the plot forward. In the Matrix, when Neo wakes up in the Matrix and you get that view of like the power generator, that's spectacle. That also was a mind f to the viewer, just like it was to the character. That was very well handled. That's that one moment, that one scene is one of the things that makes The Matrix an iconic science fiction movie, because as Jay said, they did a great job of laying the groundwork with the mystery, and there's a deeper reality going on and teasing us, and then the reveal totally lived up. Totally lived up to the build up, and it was perfectly executed. The spectacle was amazing, absolutely amazing, and that made that movie a classic.
I just got to relive that moment. My son just watched the first Matrix movie. Yes.
What do you think?
He's 10 years old. My wife and I were waiting for years to let him watch it. He was blown away by the movie, and every time one of these big moments happened, I didn't bother even watching the screen. I just watched him. I just turned to him and watched him, and I'm telling you, he was beyond riveted.
That's awesome, Jay.
He didn't have any of the Matrix in his head at all.
Right?
He didn't even know the 3D
bullet
thing
time.
yet. He didn't see He's never seen bullet time before. And every time one of the the key things in the movie happened, he would be like, like he was blown away. It was so freaking awesome.
Great. Now I had a different experience the first time I watched The Empire Strikes Back with my daughters, because what's the big spectacle moment in The Empire?
Luke, I am your father.
He actually says, "No, I
am
your father."
Yeah.
So we're watching the movie. I'm waiting for that scene, and just like you, I'm watching them. I'm not watching this scene. It happens. And my 2 daughters don't even blink. They don't. I pick up the remote, I stop the channel, I'm like, what the hell? What the hell, guys? And they're like, what? What's going on? It's like, did you hear what he just said? Did you see the scene when he just said, that he's his father? And they're like, yeah, we pretty much figured that was the case. They had already so absorbed it from the culture. Over the last 30 years.
It was pouring out of the pores of everything that they've seen on TV for their entire life.
When I watched the Matrix with them, and they thought the bullet time was campy, and I'm like, I had to say, no,
Campy.
guys. They're like, we've seen that 100 times. like this was the first movie. This is what did it. They don't get
No,
those.
Steve,
the
they've done bullet time in every
I
cartoon
know.
that they've ever seen.
The cartoons they watch, they take all the iconic moments from every
Sure,
movie
of
we grew
course.
up on, and they bake them into those cartoons. They've
Your daughter's
experienced.
like, it's derivative.
It's derivative to them. It's derivative. It
But
was. That's
it is
exactly their
because
reaction.
those moments that they're perceiving in the culture were
Yeah.
done so well.
Right.
They're so important. They're so a part of entertainment history that they become
Yeah.
infused into everything. So of course that's why you got to show them young, man. I said I
know.
am not going to let the Matrix get destroyed because kids in his grade are talking about the movie. I'm like, don't listen to them. Don't talk to anybody
my
about the
God.
movie. So finally, my wife and I were like, nope, he's watching it. We're
Yeah,
not
you
going to
gotta
let it
do
get
it. Yeah,
spoiled.
Yeah.
No, I didn't appreciate the degree to which all of the movie tropes are just infused in their kiddie culture. It's unfortunate, but it tells you what a powerful element of storytelling
Absolutely.
it is.
Right.
The spectacles, these moments of intense
Revelation.
revelations or whatever. They are amazing.
Let's do bad storytelling now. Let's give a couple of
Wait,
examples.
before that, I want to do a little bit of an alternate way to do flashbacks.
Yeah.
I just recently finished a book. Now, Jay, you mentioned the word culture and things are in.
Yeah.
This is related to Ian M. Banks' culture series. I'm tearing through the culture series. One of his books, Use of Weapons. The premise of the book blew me away. It has conventional chapters, 1, 2, 3, 4, but interwoven between those chapters is Roman numeral 12, 11, 10. It's telling two stories. One is going forward in time. The other one is going back in time. And they kind of meet at the end. And your mind is just blown. At first, I'm just confused. Like, how is this happening? But then when you start piecing it together and the revelation at the end, I mean, this was mind-blowing.
That's cool.
Super creative, super difficult. I wouldn't trust that in the hands of many people other than Ian M. Banks because he's a master storyteller. Wonderful technique.
A TV series that I think did something similar very well was Westworld. Now, this wasn't time travel, but in the first season, you're following different characters in the world.
Yes.
And because the robots themselves are basically immortal and they don't age, it's not immediately apparent that you're looking at two different time periods, like 40 years apart or 50 years apart. And you don't figure that out until the very end, and it's powerful, but there were clues, and there were definitely clues throughout the series. Very
subtle.
They were subtle enough that you definitely wouldn't see them if you weren't paying attention.
Now imagine taking those episodes, Steve, where they went into the past and then played them in reverse order. That's what Banks did.
Right.
Mind blowing.
I want to give you guys an interesting thought that I had. Like Game of Thrones was such a massive game changer to entertainment in general, but you got to think about like the idea of. They have the scripts, they have the story, they had but these episodes and to keep the storytelling consistent. Think about how hard what this is. I'm going to tell you what this thing is. You have multiple directors that are shooting episodes at the same time for these, for a season of Game of Thrones, for example. If you look at who the director is, and most of the times the director is different in every episode. Or one director will do like the first and the fourth episode, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Think about how difficult it is for those directors to be talking in the same voice, right? To be telling the same story, just different parts of the story.
Yeah.
And to be telling it in the same storytelling manner. I mean, we're talking about like one of the hardest things to do creatively is to do what I just said. And TV is so full of TV shows that can pull this off. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Well, they become expert at the storytelling formula. They know that like every episode has is a 3-act play.
Yes.
But you're always sort of have to leave off to the next episode so that there's multiple storylines and staggered in terms of where they are in terms of
It's
their
so
3
hard
acts.
to do that.
It's
Titanic
it's a
achievement.
ballet. It's a ballet.
Can't imagine.
That's why when like a TV show like the Lord of the Rings TV show that we just saw, right? It was good, but there was a lot of things wrong with it.
Yeah.
They got so close to that show being fantastic. They really did. There were so many things that went well and they did right.
It's a solid B+, but they didn't quite.
Right, they didn't quite completely
nail it.
get there, and mistakes like
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
All right, but there's examples where people don't get the storytelling correct. So just because you're
what do
talking
we
about
got?
multiple directors, the biggest multi-director fail in science fiction storytelling
what is it?
Star Wars 7, 8, 9.
oh yeah, yes.
I mean,
yes.
come on. So the 7 was, it was so derivative of 4 that it was like, really,
Yeah.
are they really doing the big giant Star Killer thing again? And what's the thing?
It was a retread.
It was a
of the other
retread,
movies.
but we're like, all right. I remember us talking about it, and we were very upset about that particular part of it. But the spectacle was great. The watching the characters again was good. The special effects were good. We're like, all right, maybe they got it out of their system. They're just laying the groundwork to make sure a new generation gets hooked into Star Wars. And now 8 and 9 are going to be awesome, right? And they were progressively worse. They were just horrible. And the reason was that you had one director going in one direction and then the other director taking it in a completely different direction. And the result was an incoherent mess. The only good thing to come out of that movie, those 7, 8, and 9, it's now our go-to endless example of bad science fiction. Whenever we need an example of how not to tell a science fiction story, we have those movies ready at hand as an example.
Well, they didn't plan the entire arc of those 3 movies out at all.
It's a trilogy that wasn't a trilogy.
They literally they wrote a screenplay, they shot a screenplay, and they put it out into the world, having no idea where the next 2 movies were going to go. No idea.
How is that even
You can't
possible?
do trilogies that way.
Yeah.
You can't. And it seems
No.
so. And the people who did it should be embarrassed that their names are attached to that work. It's really horrifying if you think about it. Disney.
It was a disgrace to
It was
the
a
genre.
disgrace to the genre,
To the franchise,
and
yeah.
to Star Wars in general. And now, and luckily, we have the Mandalorian and Andor and shows like
Yeah.
that are coming in and kicking
Yeah.
ass.
Yeah, Andor was really good.
Yep.
Good storytelling.
Some of the best Star Wars of all
Yeah.
time. And their storytelling in those 2 shows is totally different and totally awesome and unique for each one of them, right? It works perfectly with those different characters and different stories and different amounts of drama and
Yeah.
everything. It's fantastic.
No, absolutely. And there's such a rich backstory. So again, the storytelling is leveraging off of the world building. It's leveraging off of the characters because the story involves those characters. It takes place in the world, but you've got to tie those elements together, and these things always work as a unified whole, right? One of the tricks of storytelling in a science fiction world is that you may be new to the world. We may know nothing about the world.
Yeah,
Like,
and how do you get the information to the
there's so
to the
much
audience?
information. So much information you may need to get to the audience. It really is hard to manage that. So like one show I think did a really good job at that was Altered Carbon, which you and I
Oh
both
yeah.
enjoyed.
Wonder the books are great too.
Yeah.
At no point in Altered Carbon do you ever feel like some character is going, "Oh, let me explain to you what a stack is," because the audience has no idea.
Yeah, right.
Like they cleverly tell you about it subtly over multiple episodes
Right.
until you have your head wrapped around it.
Right.
And it's okay that you don't have your head wrapped around it in episode 1. They don't need to do a data dump.
Yeah.
Which is the right way to handle complicated things like that.
Writers call that abeyance, where you basically give your audience partial information. They know it's partial information, and they know or they trust that you'll give them more information later on in the story, and that's okay. It's okay that we have partial information because it also adds to the intrigue when done well. Because you're like, all right, I understand this well enough to understand this episode or this part of the story or the movie, but I know more information's coming,
Yep.
and it's going to make it more interesting. And so again, that manages the experience of the audience, and it can be in a very effective, a very positive way. Again, I think Altered Carbon does that very well for a unique world with a lot of world building information that has to be given
Yep.
to it. Here's a movie that didn't do it a good job.
Dune.
The 1980s Dune. They decided they made a couple of choices that I thought were horrible. The first was to open the movie with a data download of exposition from the princess.
They literally had
Yeah.
one of the characters in the show
the princess.
talk for a few minutes, giving you the background of the universe,
Yes.
because it is a complicated universe.
Yeah,
But
and I know why they felt they needed to do that, but it was so lazy.
It was not. It was
It-
well, and the thing is, when you compare it to the Dune that came out last year,
Yeah,
you realize they didn't need to
they
do it.
didn't need to do it.
Right.
I know.
Because it all comes down to the quality of the screenwriting and the quality of the storytelling, and they couldn't pull it off.
The other massively lazy storytelling trope that they used in the 1980s Dune was the voiceover.
Right, all the voiceovers.
Completely unnecessary, lazy voiceover.
Yeah.
If you can't, the kind of information they were giving us is not information that we couldn't get from good cinema and good acting.
Right.
There was nothing about it that we couldn't figure out. And again, like the scene that you compare that brings it home the most. Think about the scene
It's in the box.
Yeah, so when
The pain box.
the box of pain
In the Gamja bar.
Yeah. When Paul Atreides has his hand in there and he can't pull it out, otherwise she'll kill him with the Gom Jabbar.
Right.
And we're hearing his thoughts about how much his hand hurts, and then when he survives the whole thing, his mother enters the room, and in the 1980s Dune, we hear her. She says, "Oh, my son lives."
In her inner voice.
In her inner voice
Yeah.
that we're hearing. That is something that we 100% should have read on her face and her body language and everything.
It seems so obvious now when you see the new version of Dune
that scene is my favorite scene in the remake of Dune.
Fantastic.
Because the lack of the voiceover. I mean, they had to sell that, and all the actors in that scene did a fantastic job.
They killed it.
They did it. They gave us more information than the voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I told these guys my pick for what's the exposition, what series. This is a TV series that I think showed when a voiceover can be used effectively. It was a TV series, and the information we were getting from the voiceover was information we really couldn't get any other way, and that's what made it part of what made it brilliant. And that was Dexter.
Right.
Dexter, because
show.
Dexter is a psychopath who is pretending to be a normal guy. So that's what everyone sees.
And he's channeled his psychopathy
Yeah.
into killing only criminals.
Yeah, yes. It's a great premise. Because then it makes him into the anti-hero, the likable villain, or
Right.
whatever, for the show. He's the protagonist, but he's like
But
an
you're right,
anti-hero.
Steve. There's just no other way to get
There's
that
no other
info.
way to get that information, right?
No, that was critical. That was, I mean, it would not have been the same good show.
No,
Great
it was
show.
brilliant. I mean, he's telling you, like, his insights from this weird perspective, which is another element of good storytelling, by the way, is the story's being told from whose perspective.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, this Dexter's being told from Dexter's perspective, and we need his inner monologue to get that perspective, because he's, by definition, not going to show it to the rest of the world. He's hiding it. He's telling us what he's hiding, and it's that contrast that really drives a lot of the intrigue in the show. To tremendous effect, just fantastic storytelling. But man, the lazy voiceover instead of acting and directing is just a killer.
But that said, David Lynch's Dune, I think, is still wonderful.
I love it. It's a cult classic, but
Right,
you
it
love
is.
it for the campy parts of it as well.
Yes, I just want to make that clear.
No, I love it.
Still
It's
a
a
wonderful movie.
People don't like it. The thing is, it is itself. He created something that it's unique. It's
Visually stunning.
right. There were so many
It has
things about
Patrick
it.
Stewart.
Definitely. They said you were dead, Paul. One of the best delivered
the
lines.
casting was amazing.
Yeah.
The casting was
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
It's Ding.
The plan.
It's worth watching because it's an extreme movie.
Yeah.
They do everything that they do. The actors
They're all
fully
in.
commit
They're all
to it,
in.
no matter how absurd that it is.
Yeah.
But it's fun as good as that was. The remake was
I can't wait till
wow,
part
it just
2.
Yeah.
blew me away.
And the biggest choice they made was splitting it up into 2 movies. Trying to do it all in one movie was a
Forget about it.
mistake.
Yeah, it's too much story.
Yeah, it's too much story for one movie. Doing it in 2 movies.
I mean,
right
ideally,
move.
make it a 10-episode series. Give it 10 hours. I mean, imagine that.
Yeah.
But
So
Sci-Fi Channel tried to do it, didn't work.
To keep it fair,
Oh, God, no.
there are people who go to school and take college courses on storytelling.
Yes.
This isn't something that you could even summarize in
No,
20,
we're
30
being
minutes.
we're being very superficial, and we're giving it largely from a viewer's perspective.
Exactly.
But there are we're mentioning elements that we're aware of.
But storytelling is it's an incredible topic to study. It's incredibly fun, and once you start to get a beginning understanding of storytelling, and you witness it in movies and TV
Yes.
shows that you watch, you'll have the ability to appreciate it so much more. I love looking at things from a storytelling
Yes.
perspective because it'll always blow your mind. There is an infinite way to tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's by the way the cameras move and by little decisions that the directors
Sure.
and actors make to just to shape the way that the story unfolds.
And also, always one hallmark of a good movie, of a great movie, is when a scene is doing a lot of things at once. Where
Very efficient.
it's very efficient, but also it's engaging. If just one thing is happening, it's boring.
Exactly.
But when 2 or 3 things are happening at the same time, where you're learning something about the character, maybe about their backstory, their relationship, as well as what's happening in the moment, it's all kind of mixing together. It's a really good device. And when it's done well, it just packs in so much information that it is a necessary mechanism for science fiction, because if you don't pack in the information, then you need to resort to lazy exposition, or the audience is left not knowing what's going on, they don't know what they're supposed to feel about a scene that's happening or what's happening.
And that's where levels of intensity come into play.
Yeah.
When you're watching a really good story being told, like The Matrix, and it has these layers in there, there's so much going on and so much to think about. You're getting the information that's coming to you is profound. There's a lot going on, right, emotionally and everything. But stories that are boring and flat and don't really seem like there's a spark that's missing and everything, there's lots of things that can contribute to it. But man, if the storytelling is poor, if it's plain, and if it's boring, you will know immediately. You'll pick up on that immediately.
Yeah, right.
I just thought of another movie with a lot of great voiceover. A Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
A Christmas Story?
Yeah. You're not familiar with that?
No.
Okay. Jay, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
Just trust
Blade
us.
Runner had the director's cut of Blade Runner had a voiceover.
Yeah, so
That's
that
very
was,
controversial. Though.
it is.
Voiceover.
The thing is, the voiceover, and I think it was better without the voiceover. But the reason why they even considered adding the voiceover is because it was film noir. Because that's
part of the genre.
Yes.
He's a detective, and you're supposed to get like the gritty detective
Yes.
monologue in the background. That was purely for the feels. I don't think that was for exposition.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the fact that you could eliminate it and the movie works just fine.
And I liked it both ways.
I like it both ways
I don't
too.
have a problem with
So
it.
that's fine. Yeah. So don't do it to give information to the audience that they can get through acting and filmmaking,
Exactly.
and cinematography, whatever. But if you are going to do it, it's got to serve a very specific purpose. And when done well, it could be a fantastic. It's another character in the movie. It could be a fantastic element. Now, we didn't talk at all about plot, which is
Right.
an important part of storytelling. But I think, the plot is usually not the problem that I find.
Right.
It's. And most, there's not much to say about. The only thing I would really want to say is, I like a plot that's not predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We all know about the epic quest, right? The Star Wars epic quest, John Campbell.
Yeah.
But even if a movie follows the epic quest, you know the plot, you know the basic broad brushstrokes, it could still be an awesome movie if everything else is working.
Exactly. Or a very simple plot that you can
Simple
state
plots
it
can
in
be fine.
a sentence or two. That can
Yes.
be fine as long as everything else is working.
Right.
That's so.
And that's a good exercise. Is give me the plot of this movie in one sentence.
Right.
Like a father goes on a long quest to find his lost son, and along the way makes friends.
right.
That's Finding Nemo, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
So you could summarize it that way. We were talking about Ant-Man. And I said, give me the one-line summary of this movie, and it's Star Wars, right? It's the exact same, it's the exact same one-line summary.
No.
That was a problem. That was a problem for that movie. But that was bad storytelling in a lot of ways. But
Yep.
but the
Watch
just
our review.
lifting your plot out of another movie like that was
It's
bad.
ridiculous.
Yeah. And we have to mention Prometheus whenever we talk about bad movies.
Yeah, I mean,
Just for completeness.
yeah, I mean, Prometheus.
Prometheus.
Wasn't internally consistent. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there were some good storytelling concepts going on in there. Like, I felt like the storytelling was bad because the plot was horrible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So but I did feel like the cinematography and those
Yeah, it
elements
was
that
beautiful.
helped tell the story.
That's next episode,
Right.
in the series.
It gets complicated because there's so many different things going on in a film or TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that the storytelling is one component of so many things, and they butt heads with each other, and
Right.
they rub up against each other.
But what I like about this series, I like about thinking about it this way, is when a show is awesome, I'd like to know why it was awesome. And
Yeah.
when a show is terrible, for me, I like to be able to deconstruct why was that terrible. It's easy to tell that the experience was bad,
Yeah.
but I want to know why it was bad.
Yeah.
And sort of deconstructing it, breaking it down like this, at least you could think about, all right, was it Was it the characters? Did I just not care about the characters?
Yeah, were they paper thin?
Yeah, is the world not making any sense?
Is the story just not
story
compelling?
terrible? Is
Yeah.
the storytelling confused?
Not
You
enough
know,
explosions.
Or is there not enough spectacle?
Right.
Yeah, then sometimes, or maybe did they lean too heavily into that Star Trek, and not, actually tell a good story?
Yeah, right, right.
Like the motion picture.
But the storytelling, when everything else is good, and the storytelling on top of that is
That's
good.
when you get into epic.
That's when you get into epic.
Epic, yeah.
Exactly.
Classic.
That's right. That's right.
You
You know
need
what you
all
do?
of the- you need all of
watch
the-
it
those-
over.
Here's your
and over.
homework. Here's your homework. Pick one of the best science fiction movies out there. I like Star Wars Episode 4 because it's just a story that you probably already have seen, you already know. Go back and watch the movie and just pay attention to how they unfold the story to
Yeah.
you. What is the order in which things come out? How are they presenting the characters? How are they giving you reveals and all of that? Pay attention to those layers that are going on. I'm at the point where I'm watching the lighting. I pay attention to the lighting of scenes. That's how intent I am when I watch movies. I'm so into that.
So as I took a course on how to read a film, and I'll just throw this out there since you brought this up. What you really should do is just experience a movie the first time.
Yeah,
you
the
see
first
it.
time just
don't
watch
get
it and don't
inside
think
your
about
head.
it. Yeah.
Don't think about anything.
Yep.
Just experience it. The only thing you should be paying attention to is how it makes you feel. That's it. And then you could watch it and look at the lighting, and you could technically deconstruct the film and look at all those details and look at the symbolism and the theme. Theme's another important part of storytelling, by the way.
Well, that's why I said Star Wars, because most people have seen it. On your third, fourth, or 300th viewing, now look at it from how well they did it.
Yeah, there's a couple other movies that are more recent that I think are good examples to look at for how to tell a story. One is Gravity. I love that movie. I think it's underrated, partly because it works so well with the theme and her personal journey. It's a one-character movie, basically, but it was fantastic. That and Children of Men.
Oh, God,
Another
Children of Men.
Awesome movie.
I gotta watch that
and
again.
The spectacle scene in the movie, blew me away.
Yep.
Just carrying
Children of Men?
Yeah,
Yep.
carrying the baby through the front lines of
Yeah.
that battle.
World-class storytelling.
World-class storytelling.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, you can go check out our website. We turned the show into a podcast as well, so you can listen to it. I mean, look, we know we're handsome and we know we're fun to look at, but you don't need to look at us all the time. You can listen to us in the car if you want. We also have a Patreon. If you really enjoy the show, really think about it, guys. We are struggling here. We want to continue to do the show. Our time is very limited. So if you'd like to help,
You have to buy all these watermelons. I don't
yeah,
know
we got
why.
watermelons that Ian needs to break and not break, and all this crazy shit behind the scenes. But anyway, if you want to help keep this show going, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Alpha Quadrant and number 6. You could give us $1 a month. You know you could do it. We love you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
And
All right.
Thank you, Andromeda M31.
Speaking
Yes,
of a
thank you.
patron, yeah, look.
Who do we got? You guys are so great. I just
got
had to sign
more.
up as a patron just now. Been watching for a
that's
while, and it was about time. Thank you, sir.
Great.
We really do appreciate
or
that.
madam.
This happens to be my
Watermelons for all.
full-time job, so I truly do appreciate that.
And we can honestly say that so far, 100% of the proceeds are put back into the show because we never paid ourselves.
That's right. We have never earned $1 from the show yet, and we're over 100 episodes in.
Yeah. It's a loss leader.
Yeah, it is. It might have something to do partly with the fact that we are already doing this,
Yeah,
right?
I know.
We're just recording the
turning on the
conversations.
camera.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of tech work.
There's a lot of tech
and
work.
whatnot.
Ian has babies coming along and kids to feed.
I know, Ian. Jesus, slow down, pal. We really got to keep.
Wait, did you tell Steve and Bob? Because were they at your house?
What? You talking
Were
to
they
me,
at your
Ian?
house when
Talking to me.
I told
Yeah,
them. Was
were
I
they
not
at your
supposed to?
Oh no, good.
No, it was okay for me to tell you.
Yeah, Ian, you got to know by now. You don't tell Jay anything unless you want everyone to know.
Well, if it's
No,
good
I
news,
thought
I
they
can't
were at
help
your
myself.
house. I thought they were at your house.
It's juicy bad news.
Just for the chat, I'm having another watermelon.
Yeah, all right. Guys, thank you so much. We'll be back in a few weeks live, and these episodes will be coming out once a week. Awesome. We're getting really, thank you.
Thank you,
Zonker
guys.
845. It's your favorite show. I really appreciate that. We really do enjoy making the show. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks,
Bye,
Ian.
guys.
Okay, bye.
All
right.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
brother. Talk to you
All right.
tomorrow.
See ya. Bye, everybody.